Ladies and gents of the VCA, welcome to another awesome episode of In Conversation with. Today's guest is someone that I value deeply as a creative in the industry, and I am certain that you will benefit from the wisdom you are about to receive. All right, deep breath, as this CV is as long as my arm. Katy is currently the UK musical supervisor for Six the Musical and musical supervisor for Bonnie and Clyde. Katy has also worked as consulting musical director for the West End transfer of Standing at the Sky's Edge. Her musical supervisor credits include Rehab the Musical, Death Note the Musical at the London Palladium and Lyric Theatre, Rent at the Hope Mill Theatre in Manchester, and her musical director credits include Six, the Reunion Concert, Hex, musical director at the National Theatre, Bonnie and Clyde, the Reunion Concert, and Frank and Friends at Theatre Royal Drury Lane. Katy was nominated for Best Musical Direction at the 2022 What's on Stage Awards for Rent at the Hope Mill Theatre in Manchester, with Rent winning Best Regional Production. Six won two 2022 Tony Awards, including Best Original Score, and received 5 2019 Olivier Award nominations. Six was also awarded Best West End Musical at the 2021 and 2022 What's on Stage Awards, and Best Off West End Production at the 2019 What's on Stage Awards. She is currently the musical supervisor on Your Lie in April, playing at the Harold Pinter until August 11th. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Katy Richardson.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm very, very well. All the better for seeing
Good.
you, of course. Listen,
Oh.
it's so great to have you with us today. And as I mentioned earlier, the members of the VCA are in for such a treat to gain your wealth of knowledge on the industry from your perspective musically. Now, for those of our viewers watching at home, take us back to where it all began for you and help us understand how you got to where you are today.
Well, I started playing piano when I was 5, which I don't remember. But apparently from when I was a baby, I was always obsessed with pianos. Like we had one in the house, even though neither of my parents could play, because my mum bought it at like an auction or something really cheap. And I was obsessed with it and always trying to hit the keys. So they put me in piano really young, and so I've been playing since I was 5. And then going through school, I actually originally wanted to be a musical theatre actor. So I did singing, I did dance, I did acting, all of that, all the way through school, and always kept my piano, or like a classical piano, so just kept it separate. And then when I was doing, I went to my like weekend youth theatre classes, and then I remember when I was 17 or 18, there was one weekend where the musical director was sick and so wasn't there, and they needed someone to play, and they knew that I could play, so they asked me to play for that weekend. And I basically realized that I way preferred doing that than the on-stage part, and stayed there. So I then did a music degree at the University of Leeds, and then I did a postgrad in musical direction at Mountview. And then since then, I've been in London, was doing little bits and pieces of fringe stuff. It took me a few years after Mountview before I really got anywhere. And then in 2018, out of the blue, I got an email saying we're looking for a musical director for our new fringe production of a musical about the sixth rise of Henry VIII. Would you be available? And I took it. Well, got it first, then took it, and then sort of that was my big break, and the rest is history, basically.
Amazing. There's the kind of common denominator from our last guest. I trained at Mountview as well. You trained at Mountview. The last guest trained at Mountview, and also there was also talk of doing kind of regional things, because everyone has this idea of, the West End and Broadway is the be all and end all. And actually, when you don't get that, and you don't, get seen for those auditions, and you don't land those jobs, actual fact, it doesn't always end that way. And, you can go another path. Edinburgh Fringe, as you mentioned, that's where you started. Edinburgh Fringe is where our last guest started. I've also done the Edinburgh Fringe as well. But all people usually see is kind of the very kind of peak of your career of being in the West End, or that's what you started out as, and that's where you are at right now. And it's not. Everyone goes a completely different path, and actually that journey is way more exciting, and you learn to kind of appreciate everything so much more. And it's such a learning curve. Would you agree?
It is such a learning curve, and I think there's so much fun about doing fringe things. It's that it's, you know, everyone sort of has to pitch in, and you just sort of have to go with it. And it's good because then when you get to doing higher level stuff like West End, there's suddenly lots more people to help you, and everything feels easier. Because then
Yeah.
at the fringe you just do everything yourself. So yeah, I mean, I think I've done 5 or 6 Edinburgh Fringes now. I've done
Oh
so
wow.
many. Yeah, like because I did them as a student as well in between. And I would really recommend it to anyone. It's also so much fun, quite apart from anything else, but it's a great way to meet people because there's so many creatives up there, so many shows, as well as you said, like learn your craft a bit.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I mean, I did Cruel Intentions there
Oh, I didn't know
good
you did
few
that.
years ago. Yeah, it was an awesome show, awesome show. But yeah, like you said, everyone pitches in, like, you know, it helps with, you know, stage management, and everyone just
Yeah,
muscles in together because everyone's in the same boat. I remember the well, I don't want to call it a dressing room, but this shed that I was in,
yeah.
it was one day it was like pouring. I mean, it's always raining in Edinburgh, but like it's pouring down rain, and I'm in the thing just getting changed, putting my mic on and stuff, and it was just leaking in, and I just looked around, and I looked at the floor, and I was like, every time I stood up, it was like squelch, 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 and I was like, this is the dream. This is
Yeah.
what I trained to do. But like, I do think, as you mentioned, as you know, progress in your career and you end up landing, you know, bigger kind of productions and things in the West End or touring productions or kind of higher value, so to
Mhm.
speak, shows, it helps you really kind of appreciate it so much more because you've gone
Mm,
from that to there. It's so much more exciting. Okay, cool,
yeah.
cool. Question one. As you are an expert in contemporary musical theatre casting, in your opinion, what makes a really great audition musically and helps you decide on whether or not they progress beyond the first round?
Okay, so for me, the big thing that I always listen out for is musicality, which sounds obvious, but it's not. That's not as simple as just singing the right notes. It's about how you phrase stuff, how you approach it, how you link, you know, the meaning of the music with the meaning of the text. And also for me, it's about understanding the style that you're going to sing in, because not all contemporary musicals are the same. You have, you know, ones like Six that are very pop oriented, so that's we're looking for a pop vocal, or ones like Rent that I did, or Lizzie that I did last year, that are very much a rock vocal. And I think lots of people sort of put those two together, but they're different. Or you can have ones that are like you know, a sort of classic contemporary musical theatre sound, which is sort of different again, which if you were doing any sort of like Jason Robert Brown or Pacey and Paul, something like that, that's the sound you're looking for there. And then also with Bonnie and Clyde, there's a lot of country influence, so that's another different singing style again. So for me, it's about really thinking about the style of music you're singing in, because I think we as a industry have moved past just musical theatre singing. Like it's all quite specific stylistically. So that's what I'm always listening out for. Obviously, things like tuning, like whether the material sits within your range, things like that, I'm also listening for. But I think at a first round, sometimes you can give people the benefit of the doubt with that. Like lots of people sing a little bit out of tune when they're nervous. That's okay. If they did it every time, it would maybe be concerning. But in a first audition, it's like not the end of the world. And also, I think increasingly with modern musicals, people are willing to change the key to suit actors. So, you know, some of the shows, it's if you can't belt an F, you can't be in the show. But a lot of them aren't like that. So I would say those are things that people really worry about, but actually I'm more worried about the musicality and the style of singing in the first round.
Love that. Love that. Just a little bonus thing off the back of that. When it comes to someone walking into a room and they thing is they're taught at drama school to be really, really super nice and really kind to the panel and, you know, not ask a bunch of questions, literally come in, present the material, and just be overall Mr. and Mrs. Nice Guy, you know,
Mm-hmm.
person rather. And what would be your advice on that? Because what people are kind of leaning towards now, or what they're being taught, is to walk in the room and own the room and be super, super confident. And this is my job. Like nobody else can do this. Where would you sit with that? Would you sit with being kind and nice, or actually tell the room that you don't need to look any further? I'm the person for the job. Where's the,
Interesting. I think that's quite a hard one to gauge because nerves are weird, right? And they make everyone do weird things. So what counts as being confident and owning the room when you're not nervous probably comes across quite differently when you are nervous. And I think people will tend to like really overdo it, and it can be a lot if you're, because we all do it when we're nervous. We're just, everything just goes but times 10, and you just come across as this massive energy. But some people don't get that nervous for auditions too. So I think it's kind of about knowing yourself and knowing how you respond in those situations. I think I would probably always go for nice, but then again, if you could sort of match it to the role you're playing. Like if you're coming into audition for a villain or something, then I think like you don't want to come across as horrible, but there might be something to giving it a bit of gravitas.
yeah,
Um, I don't know. I
yeah,
think that's a tricky one, and I think it's about knowing yourself, because I think the thing that I love the most is when people come in and seem really genuine. So I think if you're naturally a very confident person, then amazing. But if you're not, it might come across as fake. So I think
yeah,
yeah, that's about knowing who you are and how you come across. I don't think there's a
yeah.
right answer actually.
Uh-huh. It's something that I teach all of the members watching at home, which is obviously I can help them with all of the prep for the auditions, but I never ever know what's going on inside of the room. I know
Yeah.
them as a person, and like you mentioned there about nerves, nerves is a tricky thing because you get this kind of weird blur that comes over you,
Yeah.
and you end up doing stuff that you would never ordinarily do it. And short of me strapping a GoPro to either my head when I audition, because I don't know how I audition, I don't, but also as well, strapping a GoPro to my members' heads and getting a real insight as to what that looks like. It's very, very difficult to gauge, and having them go into a room, and what I put it down to is, and it's something that we spoke about on with our last guest, which was almost apologizing before you go
Hmm.
when you get into the room. It's like, oh my God, it's so, I'm so grateful to have this opportunity, and you kind of exude this kind of energy of, but at the same time, the creative panel have gone through a process of elimination about maybe looking through all of your people's spotlights and going, actually, we'll see that person, we'll see that person, we'll see that person. So yes, there's a level of gratitude to be in the room, but also as well, they want you in the room as opposed to you being, you know, you feel so privileged to be in the room. So I think having that and not kind of apologizing for being there
Yeah.
is a win for everyone. Because I would think that the panel want you to do super well as well,
Well,
because it
that's
would
the
make your
thing.
life.
That's exactly it. That's the thing to remember. Like I've just been doing auditions for six this week and last week actually for the six West End cast change. And honestly, every single person that comes in, you just want them to book it. You're like, I just want you to be perfect for this. And there was one person in particular that came in first round, and we were like, oh, she's it. Like she's gonna get it. Like obviously you still have to go through four more rounds, but like that person walked in, and if she doesn't book it, I will be so surprised because she just nailed it and she was so perfect for it. And that's all we want. It's so exciting when that happens. So yeah, I think not apologizing is a really good thing. And I think like if you're, for example, feeling sick or something like that, like definitely don't lead with that. And I would always advise like telling your agent to tell the casting director, so the casting
Okay.
director can like tastefully say, by the way, like they're not feeling very well, and then the auditionee doesn't have to begin with an apology.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think just trying to be present and genuine is probably the best advice, and that's actually the hardest thing to do when you're nervous. Because of the blur, as you said. So I think it's just try and like ground to what you're doing, and I think you'll probably
Hmm.
come across just fine.
Great. So, given your wealth of knowledge on the industry and your experience on the other side of the table, so to speak, seeing as though we are talking about that, if we are given the opportunity to present material from the show, in your opinion, should performers sing the dots as written, or would you prefer the artist to be creative
Mhm.
vocally?
That is a very good question that is tricky to answer. God, these are all like it depends answers, but I think the key to that is knowing if you can, knowing the show and knowing the composer, because composers have different tastes. If it's a brand new musical, that's obviously harder, but I don't think there's anything wrong with asking your agent to ask the casting director, because I've definitely been asked that question before by a casting director and you can feedback. But I would say, as a general rule, singing the dots is the right thing to do in terms of like, don't change melodies, maybe a tiny little riff here and there, but like not like a massive run. However, that doesn't mean to say you sing it exactly plainly as the dot, the exact rhythms, the exact, everything. That would be unmusical. So I think like, unless you're doing a sondheim, but even in a sondheim, probably not then, you want to free it up a bit. And I think that's the thing that's actually a big influence from pop music, is it's like making the phrasing make sense for your character choices. And that doesn't mean sing every rhythm exactly right, like a tiny bit of back phrasing, or maybe you cut a note off what's written to be 3 counts, you sing it a bit shorter, or you relax the rhythms a little bit, or you sing a little bit, or whatever. I think that all for me is under the umbrella of singing the dots. So it's like singing what's written, but with a bit of style, rather than like singing it like a computer would sing it. However, if you were going in for a Frank Wildhorn show or a show like Six, then, well, in the Six auditions excerpts, it says ad lib in the sections that we expect ad libs in. So obviously, if it says that, that's fine. In a Frank Wildhorn show, sometimes, as you know, the music on the paper does not actually relate to the sound that is expected so much. So for ones like that, I would say definitely ask the casting director, like particularly for Bonnie and Clyde. The music in the score is so unlike what Clyde actually sings in the show, that it's not very helpful. And it's just the way it was originally scored out, and then Jeremy Jordan put his take on it, and then Jeremy Jordan's take on it is basically what's performed now. So with those, with the auditions, I asked the casting director to say to the cast, please learn from the soundtrack, not from the sheet music. But I think that's quite a specific case, which is why I think it's always best to ask, because people won't mind giving you the answer. But with all of that, like a note on riffing specifically, I think like people equate pop singing with riffing, and it's just not the be all end all. The truth is, with riffing, some people have the facility to just be able to smash them out, yourself included, and some people either have to like learn one rather than just ad lib one, or can't do it. And that's all of those options are fine. But I think unless you're in group one, like know that you can smash them out, no problem. Don't attempt them in an audition would be my advice. And then if the panel wants you to do it, the panel can teach you one, or can teach you in rehearsals, for example. But there's nothing worse than a badly executed riff. But that then again, like if you can't do them, I don't think it's a problem for 99% of jobs, actually. I think it's just about knowing it yourself.
That's a really excellent point, because I remember we briefly spoke about this in rehearsals, about people misconstruing riffing with pop music. And it just isn't that. If you aren't not a riffer, then just like you said, use musicality, phrasing, and use your timbre to to sing the text. And I think that is a really, really valid point, and a really, really great point. This is why I love playing on stage with you, Katy, because I feel like there's just definitely a dialogue, and like you said about little back phrasing, front phrasing, and finding each other, and that's what it's about. For those of you watching at home, when you are with a musical director on the stick who really kind of goes with the actor and pushes you and pulls you, and it's a conversation, it's a dialogue that is it's really, really, really freeing as a performer, and you feel really safe on stage as well. All right, cool. Next question. Rejection is not something that they teach you at drama school. It's something I've said for the longest time. It's something that is really difficult to prepare for. What would be your best piece of advice and, in your opinion, to deal with rejection?
Yeah, it's horrible, and it's something that affects creatives as well. I think is really important for actors to understand. So, like, if you're getting given a no, the people that are giving you the no don't take it lightly, you know. But I always say
Hmm.
to myself, if I don't book a job, if it's one you really wanted, allow yourself 24 hours to wallow. So, like, if you find out that evening, it's okay to be sad. Get the ice cream out, watch the Friends, whatever you need to do. But then I think it's time. The next day, you've just got to get over it and move on. But I think it's important to give yourself wallow time, because I think if we always just aim for like positive vibes all the time, that's a bit damaging in itself. Because it's okay to be disappointed if there's a job you really want and you didn't get it, but I just think don't let that become like a pity spiral of like, I'm never going to get any jobs, I'm not talented, blah blah blah, because it's absolutely never that. It's never going to be that. It's just going to be, for whatever reason, on that occasion you didn't get it. So I'd say, yeah, allow yourself to wallow for a night, and then the next day pick yourself up and carry on again. And know that it's so, it's so often to do with so many things that you can't control, and that's just the way it goes. But yeah, it's a horrible business. Auditioning's awful. It's
Yeah,
horrible.
I don't know why everyone wants to do it. It's not all part of the game.
Yeah.
No, but there is some amazing things in it as well. But just on that, when would it be socially acceptable to ask for feedback post the audition?
I think always via the casting director. Don't reach out to the creatives directly, but via the casting director. And if you got a no after, say, the first round, you might not necessarily get very detailed feedback because there's so many people. But I think you
Hmm.
can still ask for it. There's no problem in asking for it, and you never know. When you get to later rounds, definitely ask for feedback. And I know if I am asked for feedback on someone that I've seen, and particularly if they've got to a later round, I will really take the time to try and write them detailed things to work on.
Hmm.
And hopefully people find that helpful. So yeah, I would say always ask for it, but just if it, you're not guaranteed to get it, but I think it's
Hmm.
always okay to ask.
Hmm. Great. Just off the back of that as well, as we are all human, we're not robots. Sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. Obviously, with technique and everything, we can get it 8, 9 times out of 10. We can,
Mm-hmm.
but there are days when we are in either a long running show, doing 8 shows a week, or if we're just physically tired, vocally tired, or even if we're fighting something illness wise. If we're in the middle of a show and our voice cracks, or we forget a line, or we're a bit flat or out of tune, or something like that, what would be your best piece of advice to get over that? I think you mentioned about, having a moment of going, that was, oh my God, and wallowing it a little bit. But what would be your best piece of advice on kind of getting back on the horse and saying, do you know what? I'm the boss. What would
Yeah,
be your best piece?
when it's mid-show, and this is a bit of advice I'm going to recycle that I was given by my friend Luke Shepherd, who's a director.
Love
And
him.
yeah, I love him and I trust his advice in most situations. He always says, if you make a mistake in a show, when like an error message comes up on a computer, like you've done something wrong, it just comes up, and you always get two options: cancel or continue. When we're using a
Hmm.
computer, you don't even think about it, you just hit cancel and carry on. And he says, you've got to do that, hit cancel and continue. Yep,
Luke
I
Shepherd.
know. He's
Luke
a
Shepherd
genius.
coming in with the wisdom.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I know. I think that is the perfect way of putting it, because if you make a mistake in any other situation like that, you don't even care about it. You just carry on. Having said that, I know it's really hard to take that advice sometimes, and I know for myself, if I make a mistake in a show, I find it really hard to take that advice. But I do think it's something to work on and to think about, because everyone makes mistakes, and that's why we work in theatre. It's live and it's transient, and the moment's passed before you know it. So yeah, I mean, particularly something like a crack, like I don't care about. It's my job to care about the singing in a show, and I don't care if someone's cracked. It just shows you're trying really hard. Like, it's not the biggest names in the business have all cracked. Yeah, and I mean, like, more than once, right? So I don't think that matters. And forgetting a line, listen, it happens to all of us. Hopefully one of your mates on stage saves you. And you know, and going flat again, like literally happens to everyone. Like it's also unlikely to be so bad that anyone in the audience can tell. That's the truth of it. So yeah, cancel and continue.
Love that. Love that. Thanks for that, Luke Shepherd, and thank you, Katy, for relaying that so eloquently. Awesome. Listen, honestly, your advice, your expert advice there, like I'm sure everyone at home and will agree that wherever you are listening to this, that your wisdom has just been invaluable. So let's now just move on to some questions that the VCA members have for you. So question 1, what is a trait / skill you think is underrated or wish you saw more of in performers?
Being able to read music. I'm obviously very biased. And listen, it's not the end of the world if you can't. It really isn't. But if you can, I think.
Oh, 1 second. Katy? Sorry, it's just really choppy. Give me one. Oh, I've lost you.
Hello?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
I can. I think you're back.
1 second. Here we go. So, what is a trait / skill you think is underrated or wish you saw more of in performers?
I'm gonna say I'm biased, but I'm gonna say reading music. And that's not to say you have to be able to read it perfect sight reading or like a musical director can read it or anything like that. But I think being able to follow when it goes up and down and also be able to see what note it is just going to help you out. And it's very I'm not going to say very uncommon, but I'd say probably about like half, 2/3 of musical theatre actors can read music, which is sort of less than you think. So I think any understanding of music reading you can get is just going to make your life easier. I honestly don't know how people remember harmonies when they can't read music. It always amazes me.
Mental. What is something a performer does in the audition room that is an absolute no for you?
In the post-COVID world, I'm never a massive fan of when people come up to the panel to shake hands. And I know that it's because like everyone's trying to be polite. And so I'm not gonna like begrudge someone for it, but I just think like we just get so germ conscious because you see like so many people in a day. You're like, I don't want to shake everyone's hand, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's just me being a germphobe because I know I know the person doing it is trying to be polite.
A funny story about that actually, because I now say to everyone, based on my experience, I now say to everyone not to do that because we were taught at drama school to do that actually, which I was kind of like, if there's like one person in the room or two people in the room, and it's a kind of close, you know, when you stand on the X or wherever you are in the room, if it's not too far away, maybe, but I always just say, just don't now. But I made a mistake when I was auditioning for Aladdin. And I was in the final for it. All of Disney and were in there, like the Disney theatrical UK and US. There was on the main table there was probably about 12 people, and then there was like all of the other execs behind. There was about 40 people in the room, and it was it was multicam setup. So there was like a camera here and a camera there as well. So I was like, okay, me like an idiot. Went into the room, and because the table was quite close to the door, I shook the first person's hand, like who kind of almost went to stand up to kind of say hello, and they did that, and I just shook their hand, and then I realized that I had to then shake the rest of the hand table, and it was literally like I was, you know, when you shaking the Queen's hand or something, it's like
yeah,
and I went down the whole line, and I was like, and I made a little joke of it saying, I've started this now. Carry on. Everyone laughed at it. So I just started. So I would absolutely say don't do that because it takes up so much time. And like I say, not everyone is on board with that germaphobe or just becomes a bit weird. So yeah, that's a really, really, really great point. Question 3. Any tips for networking? We all struggle with this. Some of our members at home are represented. Some of them aren't. Some of them have extensive CVs. Some people haven't been in that many audition rooms. In terms of networking, what are your best tips for it?
It's so hard. I don't know if I'm the best at like proper networking, like American style networking, going to networking events, things like that. So I think I mostly rely on like what I call like organic networking, which is like your actual friends and people that you've got on with, staying in touch with them and making sure you go and see their shows. Like so many times people forget to come see your show, and it means so much when people do come. And yeah, I just think like particularly, this is a generalization, but particularly this side of the Atlantic, I think we're so allergic to anything that comes across as fake that I just think that like genuine relationships are the best way to go. And don't always be trying to look up in your networking, because your peers and people that you're friends with now, some of them will get successful. So maybe all of them, you want to stay friends with those people. I always think that people focus too much on trying to reach up and then don't actually appreciate the people around them, because all it takes is for one of your peers to have or friends to have a really big break, and then all of a sudden like your best friend is the next best thing, the next big thing. So yeah, I personally think that like chatting to people and stuff is always great, but just really value the people you have around you.
Love that. Like just being a sponge and just absorbing as much as you can from the people around you. I think that's such a great point. Not kind of, because like you said, everyone is just immediately always reaching for the stars and reaching up.
Yeah.
When in actual, your kind of inner circle is really, really helpful as well. I would just like to ask on the back of that as well, for those of our members who are unrepresented, in terms of, because this is a question that comes up all the time, reaching out to, obviously agents, we do that anyways, but casting directors, musical directors, if they know someone, or for example, like let's say one of my members is wanting to reach out to someone who I've worked with in the past. Is that a no-go area? Do you read those emails? Do you read those messages like through social media or through email or through your agent? Is that a way to go?
I think
Can we do that?
as an actor, reaching out to creatives doesn't really achieve anything, unless you already know them. Like if you've worked with them before or whatever. Because I mean, I actually don't get that many, but I do get some, and they're usually messages on Instagram. And firstly, there's not loads we can do with them anyway, and secondly, like it is quite annoying. So I would say only do that if you have a personal relationship with a creative. I think as a creative, we actually do a lot of our contacts by cold emailing, but the way hiring works is a little bit different. I think sending stuff to casting directors directly is totally fine. It's their job. Like particularly like Pearson Casting, who I work with a lot, they read and watch every single submission that's sent to them, like, and they will watch every single tape. So they are definitely good ones to write to. And I think increasingly other casting directors do the same. So I think if you're unrepresented, that's not necessarily a bad thing to do. But just know that if you don't get a reply, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's been ignored. It just might mean that the person's not replied to the email.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Honestly, thank you, Katy, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you're super busy, and for joining us here at the VCA. Now, to end this episode, we always end with a question for you from our last guest. Mm-hmm. They don't know who it's for, but our last guest has left you this question. Do you remember how you caught the theatre bug?
A couple of moments stick out. One, I grew up in 10 miles from Stratford upon Avon, where the RSC is based. So when I think I was maybe 7, my parents took me to see the RSC's production of Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe, and we went on Christmas Eve. And all of the actors, because it was like a 5 p.m. show on Christmas Eve, all the actors dressed as their various mystical animals came out into the foyer afterwards to meet all the children. And I met the unicorns, and I think that was like a really big moment for me. It was really amazing. and the other one is, I think the first time I saw a West End show, I think I was like 13 or 14, and my mum brought us down to London to see Chicago. And I think that was like the moment that I was like, oh yeah, I definitely wanna do this.
Love that. Love that. You don't know who our next guest is, so as tradition goes on in conversation with, would you mind leaving a question for our next guest?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be theatre, right?
Doesn't have to, it can be to do with anything.
Okay. My question is, what would your death row meal be?
What would your death row meal be? Excellent
Yeah.
question. Listen, today has been nothing short of amazing, and the value that you've provided is worth its weight in gold. And I really, really appreciate you. And I will see you later. Thank you
Yes,
so much.
you will. All right. Bye.
Awesome. That's